Okay, today I am going to teach you how to use this tool called a Punnett square to predict the outcome of offsprings when we are talking about a genetic cross. So my camera is going to go away here for just a second, but I want you to turn to this page in your, I believe you have it, in your packet, that page 7 looks like this, and it says, I'm teaching Punnett squares. I'm going to pull this up on my screen. My camera will go away for just a moment, but you will be able to see that. So Punnett square teaching, let me pull this up. Okay. So I'm going to kind of go through this, and then I am going to go through some practice problems with you. So first of all, when we're talking about Punnett squares, you have to remember some important vocabulary. This is where, I said that vocabulary was really important for genetics. So you have to just become very comfortable with the term dominant, recessive, heterozygous, homozygous, allele, genotype, and phenotype. So I have a review of those vocabulary terms here. And for Punnett squares, the dominant is always represented by a capital letter, recessive is lowercase letter, and then the different scenarios that you can have. So a Punnett square kind of looks like a word problem, and you need to figure out the alleles of the parents before you can put them on the Punnett square here. So it says that sometimes the alleles of the parents are explicitly stated in the word problem. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you kind of have to figure it out. But once you know the parents' alleles for a particular trait, then you're going to put them on the square. So this is, for example, one parent is, say, big T, little t, and then one parent is little t, little t. Okay, so this, and it doesn't matter which parent is which. You're just going to take one of these and you're going to put it on the side of, and kind of split up the alleles for one for each box. Then you're going to take this combination and put it on the top. Okay. Once you've done that, then you just follow a simple pattern of across and down. So this T comes across, this T comes down. So the combination is big T, little t. This T came across and this T came down. So that's little t, little t. Then you can see for this next one, we're going to bring this T all the way across and then this little t down. So we get big T, little t. And then this T comes all the way across and this one down. So that's, again, little t, little t. So we've completed our Punnett square there. So once you fill it out, then your job is to analyze it. So what this is showing you is all the different possibilities and probabilities for offspring for a particular trait. So right now, it doesn't matter what this particular trait is. We'll just say that this is plant height, okay? So when I look at this, I can see, okay, and if I start to kind of analyze my Punnett square here, that I have, and I'm going to use colors here, that I have 1 out of 4, actually 2 out of 4 that are big T, little t. So 2 out of 4, and that would be equal to 50%. We want to kind of represent them in percentages. And then I have another possible combination. I have little t, and this also happens 2 out of 4, which is 50%. Note that every time my percentages should add up to 100. And the good thing about Punnett squares, they're kind of the ones that we will deal with. It's always 4 squares. You can do Punnett squares that are larger, like 8 or 16. And we may attempt those at some point, but learning them, it's just 4. And so we look at this Punnett square and then we start to analyze it. And what does it mean? Okay, so that's what we're going to kind of practice today. And so there's another example here on our Punnett square page that says, shows you with the arrows. This is a really good tool if you're at home working Punnett square problems and you can't remember. This shows you exactly how these kind of fill out your Punnett square. Okay, it shows you how you fill them out. So you have some boxes here at the bottom that we are going to do some practice problems with. And I am going to do these problems here on the smartboard for you, and you're going to do exactly what I do. Okay, so the first one that I want to do is I want to set up the initial cross that Mendel did with a tall plant and a short plant. So remember, he did not know like the letter combinations of his plants. He wasn't that advanced in genetics yet. We now know this now, but this was the genotype of the plants. Remember, genotype is the genetic combination or the letter combination. And so he took a tall plant and he crossed it with a short plant. So this is what his initial setup was. So if we complete our Punnett square here, and I'm not going to do the arrows every time, but I will for the first time, okay? If he brings these letters across, then our combination is going to look like this, okay? Then if we do this one, our combination will look like this. And if we do this one, the T comes all the way across here. This T comes down, this T comes all the way across, and this T comes down. What do you notice about this? That all of the offspring have the exact same letter combinations. And this is exactly what happened. So remember that all of his plants were tall. So this is why they were all tall. And how we would analyze this, we're going to analyze this based on phenotype and then genotype. So you put that under there. So genotype, remember, is a letter combination. So in this example, there's only one possible genotype, and it is going to be big T, little t. So the probability of this happening is what percent? 100, because that's the only thing that happened. So phenotype, what does this physically look like? So if this trait was the height in plants, then that means that every single one of these plants would physically be tall. So the only possible genotype in this scenario is tall, and that's 100%. Okay, so we just did our first cross there. Pretty easy peasy. All right, so now let's take his second scenario. And his second scenario was he took two of these and he crossed them to see what would happen. So we're going to take two of these parent alleles and set them up in our next Punnett square. So this is one parent and this is another parent, okay? And now we are going to cross and find out what happens. I'm going to go over and over. So I have a big T, and then this down. So it looks like it would be this, but the proper way to write them is if there is a capital letter at all, it just always goes first when you do your genotype. And then over here, this is big T, and then this is little t. Now comes to the analysis of phenotype versus genotype. Okay, so let's do the genotype first. This is a little bit more complex. So let's look at our possibilities. So we have one scenario of big T. So I'm going to put that, big T, okay? We have another possibility of big T, little t. Y'all see that? Big T, little t. And then we have little t. So how often do these occur? Meaning, what is the probability that they are going to occur? So big T was 1 out of 4. So that's 25%. Big T was 2 out of 4. That's 50. And then little t was 1 out of 4, so that's another 25%. You add all those up, you get 100%. So we're still talking about tallness or height in plants. So what does this look like as far as the phenotype, as far as the physical trait, okay? So that means that, remember that tall is dominant, short is recessive. Okay, so if the offspring contain just one dominant allele, remember it's going to dominate or hide the recessive allele, and that is what shows up. So that means that this plant is tall, this plant is tall, and this plant is tall. So tall happens 3 out of 4 times, which is 75%. This plant is short, and that happens 25% of the time. So it's important to note that you don't always have identical phenotype and genotype probabilities, okay? Because sometimes two genotypes produce the same phenotype. So this is what Mendel did with his first two crosses. Let's just try a couple more practice ones here, okay? Let's try, and I wonder if I can move I'm gonna try and just move these down just a little bit so that we can have some more space. There we go. Okay. So let's just take a scenario. I mean, I think you probably could tell what would happen if both parents were recessive, homozygous recessive for a particular trait. But let's just go ahead and do the cross to look at it. So if both parents are homozygous recessive, then guess what? They only have the recessive allele that they can pass down. So that means 100 pheno and geno. That means that little t, 100%. And then this would be short if we're talking about tallness in plants, 100% of the time. Okay, I think you could just visually see that, but I wanted to point that out. Let's say we have a scenario where one parent is big T, and one parent is big T, little t. Do you think that they could have a recessive offspring? If we complete this cross, I want you to note that you have big T, 50%, big T, little t, 50%. So what does this mean for the phenotype? Well, notice how many of them carry the dominant allele. This one, this one, this one, and this one. So the phenotype, if this is tallness, this would be tall 100% of the time because they all have a dominant allele. Okay, so I'm going to erase here and let's do another example. And I want to do an example and show you how two brown-eyed parents, which is dominant, can have a blue-eyed child. I don't know if that's any of your genetics in your family, but you can have two brown-eyed parents that have a blue-eyed child. So brown is dominant to blue, and this is the way that it can happen. So if this is a brown-eyed parent and then this is a brown-eyed parent, I want you to notice that both parents have the dominant allele, which means their eyes are brown, but they are both carrying a recessive allele. So if you have the right combination, it can produce the recessive trait. So if I complete my cross here, I want everyone to complete it on their own. And I look at my outcome. Can an offspring have the recessive blue eyes? Yes, this would be blue eyes, and this would happen 25% of the time, okay, in this scenario. So that's blue eyes, it would happen 25% of the time. So that's just a quick little teaching, and what we're going to be doing is doing a lot of practice with Punnett square problems, and I'm going to see if I go back to my video here. We'll be doing quite a bit of practice of Punnett square problems, and you have the first set of practice problems that we are going to do together is in your packet. So if you would turn to page 9 in your packet that says Punnett square practice, and we are going to start going through this together in class. And I'll probably be giving you time to work on it in small groups, go over answers and kind of go back and forth. I have a plan to do some practice, to stop, to do some challenge and checking yourself on your understanding and then continuing on.